Hi crafty friends, and welcome back. This is part 3 of the tutorial for the journal. Now where we left off last was completing your file folders to go in your journal. Okay, so what we need to do now is to get all the paper together to go in your files. Now you can do this two ways. I buy large packets, cheap packets of printer paper, normally from Tesco's or Asda's. It's only your basic white cheap paper, which is fine for these journals. You do use quite a lot of it. Now, if you don't want your journal really chunky, then you can just make 7 lots of paper to go inside your files. Me personally, because there is a little gap when these are all sewn in, because there is a little gap in between each file, I like to put paper in between them as well. So it really packs out your journal. It makes it solid and it will last forever, really, depending on how much you wish to put in it. So what we need to do, and this is where we come to our second lot of measurements on your card. So whether you wrote in your notepad or a piece of paper or a piece of card like I have, you need to be writing down these measurements for your paper to go inside your files and in between your files. Okay, so for your paper, you will need to be cutting 8 7/8 by 6. Okay, ignore the 13 on the end. If you only wish to put your paper inside your files, then you will need to do this 7 times. If you want paper to go in between your files, then you'll need to do this 13 times. This is where I use a lot of paper because I like to have something in between the gaps, more paper in between the gaps of the files. So your paper size will be 8 7/8 by 6, and you'll need to do this 13 times or 7 times, depending on how you wish to do it. Okay, and then you just write underneath, fold in half and burnish. Okay, so I'm going to show you that now. I have already done a lot of mine, so I'll only be showing you this once. I like to use 5 sheets of paper in between, inside the folders and in between, so it gives you 10 pages. Once it's folded in half, it will give you 10 pages in between each section. Okay, so I'm just going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sheets of paper. Okay, just make sure, tap them together, make sure they're all together. So there is 5 sheets there. Okay, and then I'm going to lay it in my scribble, in my trimmer rather. I'll get it right in a minute, won't I? And it needs to be cut at 8 7/8. So I will make that first cut 8 7/8 across there. If this is a Stampin' Up trimmer, if you have a nice new blade in it, it will cut through 5 sheets of paper in one go. Not a problem at all. If it's blunt, you're going to get jagged edges and it's going to look messy. So do not throw these away because they come in handy later. Then I'm going to turn it round the other way, like so, and just make sure all your pages are together. And then we're going to cut at 6 that way. Again, don't throw these away, put them to one side. Okay, then you're going to take it out of your trimmer. Let me just move this out of the way so you can see a bit better what I'm doing. Okay, So holding them all together like that, that is still your 5 sheets of paper there. Okay, then all you're going to do along the length, you're going to fold it in half and make sure the top edge and the bottom edge meet up nicely. Okay, hold it at the top and the bottom like so. Okay, and then just drag it back to the middle and push it out to either side. Okay, and then taking your bone folder, whatever you're using to burnish your score lines, just give it a good push down. Bearing in mind, at this stage, you will need clean hands and you will need a clean tool, because otherwise you're going to end up with messy marks, black marks, smear marks all over your paper. So you have that. Okay, and then these simply are going to go inside your folders like so. And as you can see, when they're all placed in properly, it is slightly smaller than your file. So you have about 1/8 of an inch all the way round. So it sits inside them really nicely. Okay. So you're going to do that a few times. 7 times if you only want them inside your folders. 13 times if you want them between your folders. Now, I have done mine 13 times already to save a bit of time for this video. So, yeah, mine are done, basically. What was I going to say? So, when they're all together, you're going to have big chunky, okay? So you've got your 7 files that have paper in them. If I can get it right there, so you can see it has paper in it. And then you have paper in between your files as well, okay? In between that one, okay? But we're only going to put them in between the 2 outside files. You do not want paper on this side, you do not want paper on that side. Simply because when these are stitched in to the cover, you're going to have about 1/8 of an inch at the front and at the back. Now, if you've seen my journals, this is simply because on the inside of the front cover, I like to place an envelope with some bits of paper in there for journaling on, just for extra notes here and there if it's needed. That is where the front 1/8 of an inch comes from, to allow for your envelope. The back 1/8 of an inch, I like to go in the pound shop and buy some little skinny notepads. You get about 10 in a pack for £1, and I like to use them to put in the back for a little extra notepad. And you know, if it ever needs replacing or whatever, then you can just slide it in and out and remove it and put another one in. Okay, so this is what you're going to end up with. Then what you're going to need to do is on your, if you have an old mouse mat, a bit of sponge or anything to use as a detector, okay, you're going to need one of these, something to protect. You're also going to need a pokey tool, okay, something with a very sharp point so you can make your holes in your files. Hence why I said you will need something on your table to protect it. If you have a mat already, then you know, okay, but I still prefer to lay them on here and mark them on here with my tool. So what we're going to do is, starting with your first file, you're going to lay it out on your mat like so. Okay, so you have the middle there and you can see it. Okay, then you're going to take a ruler. Now you can mark this with a pencil if you prefer. It is entirely up to you. Okay, so if you want to mark it with a pencil, you're going to mark from each end exactly an inch, and you're just going to pop a tiny little dot. I'll do this with my white pencil actually, so you can see on the camera hopefully. And then just move your ruler across, and then you're going to mark an inch from that end and put a little dot there. Okay, and make sure it is in between your two score lines, because that's where you're going to need your holes to sew it into your cover. So if you can see on there is the two score marks. So the first one is an inch from the top, and then you've got an inch from the bottom, and it is in that crease. Okay, try to centralise it in that crease. And then you're just going to lay it down on your protective mat, and using your pokey tool, you're just going to poke a hole where those dots are, either end between the centre, like so. Okay, then with your paper, try to keep it together. Okay, I like to sort of pat it down onto the mat, try and get my nail into the crease, and then flatten it out. Okay, keeping hold of it so your sheets of paper do not move around from each other. And then take my ruler. Now, because your paper, find that crease, because your paper is 1/8 of an inch shorter at the top and the bottom of your file folder, you will need to place 2 marks on the crease line. Okay, and they need to be 7/8 of an inch, because it's that shorter than your file folder. So 7/8 of an inch from the top and 7/8 of an inch from the bottom. Okay, and then again, using your tool, you just poke a hole through all 5 sheets of paper, like so, where you put those marks, like that. Okay, and then when you fold this back over and you place it into your file, you will see that the holes match nicely, and you still have your 1/8 of an inch at the top and the bottom of your page. If you can see that, you can see the 2 little bits of paper there where I've poked the tool through, and they match the holes on the file. Okay, then the paper that's going to go in between, again, you do exactly the same for that. So using my ruler against the folds there. Now, I don't bother to mark these with a pencil first, I just do it by eye. I have my ruler here, I have my pokey tool. It has got such a tip on it that I know exactly where it's going through the paper. So I just use my tool and I go to 7/8 of an inch, poke a hole from the other end, 7/8 of an inch, and poke a hole. I like to do it that way because sometimes you can end up with pencil marks and things where you don't want them, and then you're rubbing them all out, etc, etc. Okay, so you have your one folder with your paper in, and you have your one that's going to go in between your folders. Okay, so we'll do another one together. This is another file. So we're going to lay the file out on your mat. I'm going to take my ruler and my pokey tool, and I am going to measure 1 inch from that end. Find the centre of your gully, 1 inch from that end, and I'm going to poke a hole. Then I'm going to find 1 inch from that end, and in the centre of the gully, poke a hole. Okay, and then again with the paper, hold it steady, open it out, place my ruler against the seam, against the fold of your paper. Okay, take your pokey tool. Don't forget this is the paper, so on the paper you want to go, it would help if I could see it properly. So on the paper you want to go 7/8 of an inch from the top, 7/8 of an inch from the bottom. Okay, fold that back in half, place it in your file folder. Now you will need to do this for all your pieces. Okay, I've not done all mine yet. I'm going to kind of get them done. Again, this is the paper. So line your ruler up with that crease, and you're going to go 7/8 of an inch, poke a hole, 7/8 of an inch, poke a hole. I'll do this one last time on camera so you are definitely sure. This is the file. So taking my ruler, and we are going to go, make sure that's lined up properly, 1 inch from the top, and in the gullet poke a hole, and just move my ruler across a little bit, and then 1 inch from the bottom, in the gully poke a hole. The paper to go in the centre of that file. Again, line my ruler up with the centre fold, like so. Then we're going to go 7/8 of an inch right in that fold and place a hole. From the bottom you're going to go, oh, my ruler's just gone screw whiffy, 7/8 of an inch and poke a hole right in the seam, like so. Now I'm not going to bore you and sit here doing all of these on camera, because it's just going to take up a lot of time and you're going to get extremely bored. But if you have them all stacked up together, okay, and then when they're all stitched in, all the holes will be in exactly the same place for when you stitch into your cover. Okay, so I've done a few of them. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of that for a minute. I will do that off camera in a moment. Right, so the next piece we're going to come across, once you've done this a few times, it is so simple to make. I can normally create the whole basics for a journal within an hour to 2 hours. It's not hard, it's really not. Once you have all your measurements, you know your score marks, what you're doing. As I said, if you write it all down, on pieces of cards so you know what you're doing, then it's a lot easier. So what we need to do now is we need to create the cover for the whole thing to go in, or your files to go in. So what you're going to need to do is you need to come to your next measurements on your card or your notepad, your piece of paper, whatever you're using. Okay, and what we're going to do now, again, this is entirely up to you. Okay, now I've put there cover. Okay, I like my cover to be 12 long, okay, and 6 1/4. Now the 6 1/4 is exactly the same height as the file folders. I like mine like that. Not a lot of people do because they find it difficult to get it flush at the top and the bottom. But as long as you stitch it in right and pull the cord or ribbon, whatever you're going to do, tight enough, it will sit flush and it will look lovely. If you're not too keen on doing that sort of thing, you can make it a little bit taller. So if your file folders are 6 1/4, you could go to 6 1/2. So you have 1/8 of an inch at either side. But then obviously you're going to have to adjust your measurements when you come to that. So when you come to marking them in, instead of going 1 inch down from the top and 1 inch from the bottom, if that was 6 1/2, then you would have to allow the 1/8 of an inch at the top and the bottom to put your holes, obviously. But as I said, I like mine to fold up and meet like a book. So the file folders are the same height. It's not going to damage it because the paper inside is not going to get damaged on the top and the bottom because it's 1/8 of an inch shorter than the file folder. So it will be safe. So all I wrote on here is cover. Okay, you need 12 inches by 6 1/4. Okay, once you have cut that, you need to write underneath, score 5 inches from each end. Okay, so that's score 5 inches from each end. All right, so I'm just going to grab a piece of card. Bear with me a second while I grab another piece of card. This card is so thick that sometimes I don't know if I've got 1 or 2 sheets. Now I have 2 stacks of card. The one I use for the file folders is reasonably thick because you want something sturdy. The one I use for the covers is a little bit thicker. This is quite a sturdy lump of card. This is probably about 260, 280 GSM. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take my trimmer like so, place it in here. Now I'm going to cut first at 12 inches. Okay, so 12 inches. Remember, don't throw these pieces away, put them to one side because they make your pockets and things throughout your journal. So it's 12 inches that way, and then 6 1/4 that way. So just turn it round and cut it the other way. 6 1/4. Again, don't throw this away. It's a nice big chunk of card you can use for pockets and little envelopes and things. Okay, so you will end up with that. The measure's 12 by 6 1/4. Okay, so let's move this out of the way. Then I'm going to take my scoreboard like so. Now with the long edge, you're going to place that against the top of your scoreboard. Okay, make sure it's nice and straight. Again, using the thicker end of my scorer, you're going to score at 5 inches. Just put a nice score line down there, like so. Okay, then you're going to turn it completely round the other way. So do a full turn. So again, you've got the straight edge against the top. And again, we are going to score at 5 inches. Like so. Okay, so if you can see that, I scored 5 inches from that side and 5 inches from that side. You should have something that looks like that. Okay, so now I'm going to get this moved out of the way. Alright, so what I'm going to do, again, I've scored this side, so I'm going to turn it over, okay, and then I'm going to fold over where I've scored, taking my bone folder, and then just give that a good burnish, okay, and then folding over the other side where you've scored, and give that a good burnish as well, like so. So you should have something that looks like that, and that is going to be your cover. You're probably thinking, it doesn't look very strong, it doesn't look very sturdy. Once you have all your pieces of paper and everything stuck on here, you're going to stitch in, so all your stitching will be coming out of the back here, and then we're going to tie it into the middle so it pulls it all nice and tight, and then we're going to cut another piece of card that covers the back, which will go over your stitching. So then once your paper is on there, you can't see your stitching marks or anything, and it makes it strong and sturdy, and your stitching's not going anywhere. Okay, so now comes the tricky part. So please bear with me, because I'm really hoping that I can explain this to you in a way that is kind of easy for you. We need to mark out this centerpiece here, so we know where we're going to put our holes and where our stitching is going to go. Okay, so what I have done is I have made myself another little piece of card which looks like that. Okay, now to make it easier for you, I've made it a bit larger so you can see where we're going to start marking. Okay, now before I show you that, you will need to take a pencil and a ruler. Now I turn mine round sideways, just inside that score line. Okay, I'm going to mark 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom, then move over to this side. Again, I'm going to mark 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom. Okay, if you prefer, you can put a little line across there, just very gently, because you don't want it to show once it's all built together. But this might be easier for you to do, just putting a little faint line across the top and the bottom there. I'm not sure if you can see that on there, just about. But you've got 2 lines, 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom there. Okay, and you only want it in that piece there, which is going to be your, where you need your stitching and your holes. Right, So what we need to do on here is we need to lay our ruler across this way, and we need to mark out where exactly we're going to place our holes. Okay, now if you're only using your files and you only want to stitch in the files with the paper, then that's fine. Excellent, no worries at all. What you're going to need is to mark these measurements. Now I've enlarged this a bit on here just for your benefit, so you can see without my tiny little writing. Now you might want to write on a piece of paper or another piece of paper holes for files. Okay, so you know where you're going to put your holes across here for your file folders. Okay, and these are the measurements that you are going to need. Okay, so you want to put your first hole at 1/4 of an inch, your second hole at 1/2 of an inch, your third hole at 3/4 of an inch, your fourth hole at 1 inch, your fifth hole at 1 1/4 of an inch, your sixth hole at 1 1/2 inch, then your last hole at 1 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so I hope that's clear enough for you. If you know, you can just pause it on here so you can write down those measurements, then you know where you need the holes to put your file folders. Okay, if like me you like to put paper in between your files so there's not a gap, then you will need these following measurements. Now you can write down on a piece of paper measurements for paper inserts if you like, or whatever you feel that you need to write down. These are the measurements you are going to need for them. Your first hole is going to be 3/8 of an inch, then you will need 5/8 of an inch, then 7/8 of an inch, then 1 1/8 of an inch, then 1 3/8 of an inch, then 1 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so again, just pause the video there so you can write that down, draw it how you like, you know, just scribble the measurements on a piece of paper, whatever's easiest for you. Okay, I just done those so you could actually see and you've got time to write down the measurements. So that aside, and mine is just scribbled on a piece of card like so. Okay, so then what we're going to do is where you've drawn your line across the top, okay, you're going to line your ruler up like so, and using my measurements I am going to be doing 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 3/4. Okay, so you will need to do that at the top and the bottom. That is only if you're putting in your files and not the paper in between. Okay, if you are putting your paper in between, then you will need to leave your ruler on there, okay, and then you will need to mark the other measurements on there, which is going to be your first one is going to be in between the other two, which is going to be 3/8 of an inch, then 5/8 of an inch, 7/8 of an inch, 1 1/8 of an inch, 1 3/8 of an inch, and 1 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so you will have a lot more lines on there and a lot more holes to contend with. Okay, so then I'm just going to turn it round and do the bottom as well. So line that up so that's right in there. Okay, so my first measurement is going to be 1/4 of an inch, then it's quite easy to do this way. What you'll need to do really is, if you're putting the paper in between as well, then it's easier for you to see. You can start at 1/4 of an inch and then just mark every 1/8 across to 1 3/4. Okay, so as you can see, I have done both ends there, and there is a gap there and there is a gap there. But this is what I was saying to you, you need to leave that gap because there's going to be an envelope with paper in on this side, and there's going to be a notepad attached to the back that side. So you will need that gap to allow for the embellishments and bits to go on them pages. Okay, so when you've done that, again, I am just going to take my protective mat. I am going to take my pokey tool. Okay, and then every single one of these across here on that inch line where I've marked, I'm going to poke a hole. Sorry, I was concentrating then, I can't. Okay, so you will end up with something that looks like that. Okay, the holes are not going to be perfectly straight because I haven't got my ruler against it. Not a problem, it's all going to be covered anyway. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same again across the bottom. Okay, so you should have something that looks like that. Okay, that is your holes for the top and the bottom where all your paper and your files are going to be stitched in. Okay, let's move that out of the way. Right, so I'm going to leave you with that. Hopefully you will get the idea of what we're doing, and please, if you don't understand anything or you feel that I've not explained it properly, please tell me, please leave a comment, and I will try to, you know, correct it or come up with an idea in the next video to make it easier for you. So I will leave you with that. You need to put all your holes in your paper, your file folders and your cover. Okay, so that will give you something to do for the afternoon. I'm now off to work, so I will speak to you guys again later. Thanks for watching. Bye.